samsaradava nalalidaloka tranaya karuna ganaganatvam Praptasya kalyana gurnanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyan Manasorasena Romancha Kampa Shutaranga Vajo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shri Vigrahara Nityanana Shingara Thanmandira Marjanado Yuktasya bhaktam saniyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Chaturvida Shri Bhagavat Prasada Swadana Triptan Haribaksha Sangram Kritraiva Triptim Bhajata Sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shri Radhika Madhavayorapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupanamna Pratikshanasvadanalolupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Nikunja Yono Ratikeli Siddhai Yayali Vir Yukti Rapikshaniya Tatrati Dakshadati Valabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam साक्षादारित्वेन समस्तशास्त्रे उक्तस्तथा भाव्यतेव साधि किन्तु प्रबोर्य प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् यस्य प्रसाद भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसाद न गति कुतोऽपि जयं स्तुवांस्तस्य यशा श्रीसाद्यं वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद चैतन्य नित्यानंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Neelamadava Radha Neelamadava Radhe. Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe. Jai Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadrama Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram Sita Ram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha. Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jai Om Vishnu Pada Pramhamsa Pratikacharya Shloka Shishima Divine Grace Aparchana Vrinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya BBD Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Pramhamsa Pratikacharya Shloka Shishima Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anand Kakoti Vaishnanda Ki Jai. Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Premise Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Marka Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Ayodhya Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gaurang, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. प्रह्लादलाददायिने ददायिने हिरण्यकाशिपूर्वक्षः शीलटङ्कानकालने टङ्कानकालये हितो न सिंहा परतो न सिंहा तो न सिंह यतो यतो यामि ततो न सिंहा यतो यतो यामि बहिर्नसिंहा हृदयेन सिंहा नरसिंहा हृदयेन सिंहा नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपते तव करकमलवरेण अद्भुतसिंहा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे तव करकमलवरेण अद्भुतसिंहा लिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव सिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रह्लाद महाराज जय प्रह्लाद महाराज प्रह्लाद महाराज जय प्रह्लाद महाराज नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव। लक्ष्मी नरसिंहदेव भगवान की, प्रह्लाद महाराज की।
तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवसचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवसचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवसचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवसचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवसचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवसचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदा देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो ए अभिलाषी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः जे तुम्हारा शरण लोए तारा वंचा पूर्ण होए कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन बासी मोरा ये अभिलाष बिलास कुंज दियो बास नयने हरिबो सदा जुगल रूप राशि এই নিবেদন ধারো সখিরানুগাতা করো सेवाधिकारा दिए करो निज दासी दीना कृष्णा दासे कोए ये ना मोरा होए श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जिन भासी श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जिन भासी Namo Namaha. Tulasi Krishna Preyasi. Namo Namaha. Yani kani cha papani brahmahatyadikani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade. Yani kani cha papani brahma hatyadikani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayo Tulsi Maharani, Jayo Tulsi Maharani, Jayo Tulsi Maharani, Jayo Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Maharani, Jayo Tulsi Maharani, Jayo Tulsi Maharani, Jayo Vrinda Devi, Jayo Vrinda Devi, Jayo Vrinda Devi, Jayo Vrinda Devi. Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol. तुलसी देवी महारानी की जय, वृंदा देवी की जय। वृंदाए तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य विष्णु भक्ति कले देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य विष्णु भक्ति कले देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य विष्णु भक्ति कले देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य विष्णु भक्ति कले देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य विष्णु भक्ति कले देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य विष्णु भक्ति कले देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः।
O Tulasi, beloved of Krishna, I bow down before you again.
My desire is
in the service of Shishivada and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wish fulfilled. Bestow mercy upon him and make him a resident of Vrindavana. My desire to also grant me a residence in the practical of Sri Vrindavana town. Thus within my vision I shall always behold the beautiful pastime of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Karha Danso Vraja. Please give me the privileged devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays. May I always swim in the love of Shishirata and Govinda. Srimati Tulsi Maharani ki jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting holy names that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme devotees who have dedicated their lives for the propagation of holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Brahma to be equal to independent of name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of a spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or the literature in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritualistic activities offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities, karma, kanda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glorious holy name. 10. To not complete faith in the chanting holy names and to maintain material attachments in understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to achieve desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us have our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just as high trees who can feed everyone, and they are full of compassion, fallen, conditioned souls. Shri Chaitanya Shastakam ki jai. Cheto Darpana Marjanam Pavamaha Davakni Nirvapanam Shriya Gairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavatu Jivanam Anandam Puti Vardhanam Pratipatam Purnarmita Sadhanam Sarvama Snapanam Paravijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuta Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Smaranina Kalaha Eta Deshi Davakripa Bhagavam Mamapi Durudevami Disham Yaha Janina Nurakaha Trinatapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sashnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtanya Sada Harihi Na Thanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamaye Mama Jamani Jamanishvare Bhavata Bhaktir Haituki Twai Ayinanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Sthita Duri Satisham Vichintaya Nayanam Garadashuru Daraya Vadanam Gadgada Rudaya Gira Pulakai Nichitam Bapu Kada Tavanama Kahane Pavishyati Yuga itam nimishena chakshusha pravisha itam shunya itam chaka sarvam govinda virahena me ashrishava padaratam pinnashtumam atarshanam marmhatam karotu va yatha tatha va vidathatu lampato matprananathastu sa eva naparaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Shri Chaitanya Shastakam ki jai. Glory to Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all that does accumulate for years and extinguishes fire of conditional life or repeated birth and death. This Sankirtana movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays and benediction moon. It increases transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables the fully taste the nectar for which always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone grants all benediction to human beings. Thus you have hundreds, millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names you have invested our transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, our kindness enables us to easily approach you by your holy name, but I am so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking himself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready of all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Sanhamardananda, I'm your eternal servitor. Yet somehow I fall into this ocean birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me at one Adam to your lotus feet. Oh my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant the holy name? When will my voice choke up? When will the hair of my body stand and end a recitation of your name? Oh Govinda, feeling of separation, I'm considering the moment to be like a great millennium. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipable Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Shri Mangala Charanam prayers ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshumitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Soyam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurung Vaishnavam Shcha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Shcha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhuttale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pachatya Desha Tarini Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhuttale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini Jivarshabhanavi Devi Daitaya Kripaptaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhavit Namaha Madhuryo Jala Premadya Shrupanuga Bhaktita Shri Gaura Karna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Mutaye Dinatarini Rupanuga Viruddha Pasithanta Dvanta Harini Namo Gaura Kisharaya Sasha Vairagya Mutaye Vipalamba Rasambode Padam Pojete Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachidananda Namini Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Bhava Bhumistvam Nirdeshta Sajana Priyaha Vaishnava Savabhama Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vancha Kalpa Durubhishta
Vipassindu Giricha Patitanam Namo
Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurateshe Namaha Panchatattvatakam Krishna Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Srato Pangor Mamamanda Matergati Masarvasa Padam Boju Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vindaranya Kalpa Jumadaha Shrimad Ranagara Singhasanasto Shrimad Radha Shira Govinda Devo Pishtari Seva Mano Smarami Shriman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsi Vata Tatasita Karsham Venu Saner Gopir Gopinata Shri Yestunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Tata Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadirade Govinda Savakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satmasuka Praviksha Lakshaviteshu Surabhira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Samprama Sevimanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kavanantamaravinda Dalayataksam Parharvatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Gandharvakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandrakala Savanamadi Ranangadam Panagakeli Kaladilasam Shamam Tripanga Laditam Yata Prakasham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Anganyasya Sakalendriya Vritimanti Pashanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Satujala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achotam Atati Manantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Vedeshu Durabam Madurabam Atam Bhakta Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantatu Koti Shatavasara Sampragamyo Vayurathapi Manaso Munipangavanan Sotyastya Prapada Sibhya Vichitatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Kopya Sora Chaitum Jagadanta Kotim Yachakti Rasti Jagadanta Chayaya Danta Antantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yadbhava Pavithadiyo Manujastateva Sanprapya Rupa Mahimasana Yana Pusha Suktaryam Eva Nigama Pratitastuvanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Sarvati Pavitati Stabi Eva Nijarupa Yakalabi
Goloka Eva Nivisata Kilat Mabuto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Premanjana Churuta Bhakti Vilochanena Santasadeva Videshu Vilokayanti
Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Guna Swarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Mutisukala Menatista Nanavataram Karopanishukintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramapamam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Go ahead.
Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with a figure of beauty tinged with hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers, beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Shamasundara is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of that transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning, and the eternal Purusha. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, His potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and at the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men who are imbued with devotion sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveyances, and ornaments. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha, resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities, in the company of her confidants, Sakis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shyamasundara, Krishna himself with inconceivable innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with salve of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrisimha, Vamana, etc., as his subjective portions.
Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Nasitarne Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So today is homework day. So Mataji, you did your homework. So you're first. Give her the microphone, please. That's all right. Sit down. He's gonna a lot of people did their homework, so.
Reward.
Without doing your homework, you'll never really understand philosophy of Krishna consciousness. There are many people that are initiated, but don't really have an understanding of the philosophy because they don't come to class regularly and they don't do any homework. So now we're going to see what happens when you do your homework. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. The homework is about to write down the important points from Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.1 lecture given by Srila Prabhupada in New Delhi. And the outline I have understood and I personally connected is what I have written. Out of all the Vedas, Puranas, Upanishads and Mahabharata, which are the great contributions of Vyasadeva, Srimad Bhagavatam stands the most at the top and is the last contribution of Vyasadeva. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.3, Vyasadeva giving the information that Srimad Bhagavatam is the Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Phalam Idam. Nigama means Vedas. So he compared the Vedas as a tree where you can get many fruits. Kalpataru means desired tree. Desired tree, you can get any kind of fruit from that tree. In the material world, there are many different types of trees, fruits and flowers, but you can get one type of fruit or one type of flower from the particular type of tree. But there is another tree in the spiritual world, which is the desire tree. So Vedas means knowledge. So from the Vedas, you can get all kinds of knowledge, both material and spiritual. So in the tree of knowledge, the ripened fruit is...
Notice it says material and spiritual. So you don't really have to go to schools to get material knowledge. You can get it all from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Go ahead.
And the ripened fruit in that tree is Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada talks about Bhagavatam and Bhagavata. There are two kinds of Bhagavatam. One, this is the Grantha Bhagavatam, and the other is person Bhagavatam. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised that if you want to understand Bhagavatam, then you must approach a person whose life is Bhagavatam. He said, Bhagavata Paragiya Bhagavata Stane. that if we listen Srimad Bhagavatam from the person Bhagavatam, then it is very easy to understand the spiritual knowledge given in the Srimad Bhagavatam.
So if you try and look up that verse, you won't see that exactly.
Right.
But you will see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita a verse that is similar to that. And let me just see where that is. Anyway, go ahead. I'll find it.
Sure. Prabhupada repeatedly mentions how important the Bhagavata or Bhagavatam is, and mentions how every shloka of Srimad Bhagavatam is full of spiritual information. Prabhupada also mentions how we have to take advantage of the scripture, at the same time caution us how to study these books as well. We have to study Bhagavatam from the very beginning and take the lessons from live Bhagavata. This lecture, the lecture Prabhupada was talking, has many important aspects for parents to guide their children in just not the material world but also in the spiritual world.
So you'll find the verse, Yaha Bhagavata Pada Vaishnavirastani. The way he quoted it, you won't find that exactly, but this is where it's derived from, and it's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the point where a person who wrote some poetry about Lord Chaitanya would never accept hearing anybody's poetry unless it was heard first by his servant Swarup Damodar Maharaj. So when this man who wrote this poetry about Lord Chaitanya read what he had written to Swarup Damodar Goswami, Swarup Damodar rejected it. Although when he read it first to the assembly of devotees, they all liked it very much. But when he read it to Swarup Damodar, he said, "This is nonsense. Everything you've written is nonsense." And all the other devotees were shocked, and the man was shocked. And he said, "Look, you don't understand anything about Lord Chaitanya. Better you go to a Bhagavat devotee and hear about Krishna from the Bhagavat devotee so you can understand something." So he completely rejected what the man wrote, even though all the other devotees thought it was really nice. And then he said, Yaha Bhagavata Pada Vaishnavirastani. If you want to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, you better go and sit down and hear it from a bona fide Bhagavat devotee, rather than use your fertile brain to write down nonsense. All right. Okay, go ahead.
This lecture has many important aspects for the parents, not only to guide their children in the material world but also in the spiritual world. The best example we have is Rishabhadeva. While explaining to his kids, mainly Bharat Maharaj, one whose name is the land Bharatvarsha, India, has been called on, here are some of the points Prabhupada mentions. In the Vedic civilization, there is a mandatory retirement. In no Vedic literature, there is a word called Hindu mentioned. In Vedic literature, people follow the principles called Varnashrama Dharma, which is the real occupation. The whole Vedic civilization purpose is to realize God. It is also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 15.7 how we are part and parcel of Krishna. It is just not the human beings who are part and parcel of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but every form of life. It is also said in Bhagavad Gita 14.4 about how we are all covered in this material dress. Prabhupada also mentions how Krishna brings Arjuna to the spiritual platform who was lamenting at the bodily level. This is most of us who thinks this body is eternal and simply lament on the material things. This bodily concept was also mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.84.13, where it mentions how this body is made up of kapha, flesh, pitta, bones, and vayu, mucus. Prabhupada also gives a great analogy. If we cut this body, we will find flesh, body, bone, urine, stool, and so many things which are material. But does that an intelligent man thinks that way? No. If a person is thinking at this bodily level, then Prabhupada mentions through this lecture how we have been living like cats, dogs, hogs, or asses. Whereas a real realization is Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit soul. This is the real realization, this is the real knowledge. A real guru always corrects you not only in the actions but also in the process of thinking, and this is where we all can accept Prabhupada as Jagat Guru, because every statement he states is supported by Vedic or Shastra Praman. He also sets a great example of how we can look up for a real guru. And I tried to give some examples where humans and animals are compared. Bodily identification level, as an example in human life, we can look at immigration process, how we differentiate ourselves from other countries and how we differentiate ourselves from the neighborhood. Whereas animals do the territory matching of this place belongs to me and you're not supposed to come, jurisdiction. And being part and parcel of Krishna, the example Prabhupada mentions is how a finger is connected to a body. As long as the finger is attached to the body, it has the value. And once it loses, there's no value for the finger. Just like that, as long as we are attached to Krishna, being part and parcel, we have value. And animals may not have this consciousness as they are part and parcel of Krishna. But because humans have that consciousness, it is us, we should not be harming the animals. And Prabhupada mentions how not to waste this human form. Rishabhadeva is mentioning again and again, do not live like hogs and dogs to their kids. Animals, most of the animals do not have this level of intelligence. If we waste our human life, we are back into this body, spending millions and millions of years to come back to human form. And Vedic civilization means Varnashrama Dharma, where our ultimate goal is God realization. I think as humans with our civilization upgrades, we have made a khichdi of what we have been learning and eventually lead to how we are behaving like animals. Animals have no knowledge about this concept of understanding. Prabhupada talks about the beautiful Varnashrama system Krishna has created and how even though Brahmins cultivate knowledge, Kshatriyas are the ones who distribute knowledge, which is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 4.2, to the general masses. Vedic civilization means Varnashrama Dharma. Prabhupada repeatedly gives examples over and over how we have been attached to this body. The 4 things which are forbidden for humans are currently the most attractive things in Kali Yuga. Here Prabhupada is talking about tapasya and encouraging us to purposefully choose by giving a great example. Tapasya means austerity, penances, voluntary acceptance of something, some means of activity which may not be very palatable. But still, we have to do that. Just like a patient, if he is forbidden by the physician not to take a certain type of foodstuff, it may be pain. Just like typhoid fever, the doctor advises do not take any solid food. But if we are accustomed to take paratha, so in thyroid, to take paratha means death. Similarly, we have to follow the Shastric injunction if we really want to come out of this material bondage. Material bondage means this body. Our real problem is this body. So do not do these 4 forbidden things for this human life. Even though we all know that we have to leave this world one day, but we have been hoarding for things, thinking we are eternal in this world, and being foolish, thinking humans and thinking that humans are doing what we are doing. We are going on to establish ourselves very tightly in this material world, but Krishna says that you will not be allowed to live. These things are to be considered. Therefore, they have been described as pramata nunam pramata kurte vikarma yad indriya pritaya apnoti. Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.4. They are acting sinfully, or they are committing so many sinful activities, and they are becoming entangled for another's body, who is the resultant action of our sinful activities. One of the most amazing factor I learned in this lecture is how the moon planet is further away from the sun planet, and these material scientists are presenting all bogus propaganda about landing on the moon. They might have landed on the Rahu thinking it is moon, but Vedic study says moon is 9.5 million miles away from earth, whereas sun is only 9.3 million miles away. So it is important to have knowledge only through Shastra. He also mentions how we should not accept anything which says perhaps, maybe, likely. Our source of knowledge is Krishna or Krishna disciples. Although Prabhupada clearly mentions that he does not have any opinions, he is just following what Shastra says. Prabhupada stresses all along this lecture about how important it is to get a human body and do not waste this human form in the bodily conception or in the 4 forbidden acts. Hare Krishna.
That's it? Good. Yeah, so that that statement is Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 5, verse number 131. If you want to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, you must approach a self-realized Vaishnava and hear from him. You can do this when you have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
It's comprehensive. So, Prabhu, you did your homework. Yeah. We've been waiting for you to read. See, the whole point is, unless a mother and father teach their children real knowledge of who Krishna is, they will be violating Krishna consciousness. It's actually sinful to hold back information from children or from anyone. So, the proof that someone has understood Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is that they will instruct their children in Dehinmosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam chara tata dehantara praptir dirastatra namuyate. Second chapter, 13th verse. That one's body is changing all the time, which means I am not this body, but what am I? I am the soul within the body, and there's also Paramatma in the body. So therefore, real knowledge is knowledge of Paramatma and the relationship of the Jiva with Paramatma. If you don't teach that to your kid, then you're nonsense. You will fail in Krishna consciousness, and your child will fail also. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the homework was read Srila Prabhupada's lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.1 and make outline with examples. So this is an attempt to compile some of that. So Prabhupada is touching multiple topics on this lecture. So I've divided them into this. So the first topic was process of knowledge. So it says our knowledge should be through Shastras. We get knowledge from Shastra like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. We get knowledge from the best scientific man or persons, the person and others, acharyas. This process of knowledge also has no speculations like the modern imperfect knowledge that has it may be perhaps etc. We accept Shastras as our authority. Srila Prabhupada gives an example of people accepting newspaper as their authority to believe that Americans have gone to moon. When they can believe in newspapers, why can't we believe in our Shastras? We got knowledge from Shastras like Padma Purana that says there are 900,000 species of life within water. We accept this knowledge as authority. And our source of knowledge is Krishna or Krishna's disciples. Next point is Srimad Bhagavatam is described as an Nigam Kalpataro Galitam Phalam Idam. It's a ripened fruit from spiritual desire tree Kalpavriksha. So Srimad Bhagavatam is full of spiritual information. To become fully aware of Bhagavat, to become fully aware of Bhagwan and the devotees of Bhagwan, one should approach a person Bhagavata whose life is Bhagavatam. Then it will be very easy for us to understand the spiritual knowledge. So according to the Nectar of Instructions, text 5, there are three types of devotees. Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyam Adhikari, and Uttam Adhikari. So I'll just read through the Uttam. So the Uttam Adhikari is the highest devotee, is one who is very advanced in devotional service, and Uttam Adhikari is not interested in blasphemising others. His heart is completely clear and has attained the realized state of unalloyed Krishna consciousness. According to Srila Rupa Goswami, the association and service of such a Mahabhagavata or perfect Vaishnava are most desirable. It is further explained in text 5 that of Nectar of Instruction that when a person realizes himself to be an eternal servitor of Krishna, he loses interest in everything but Krishna's service, always thinks of Krishna, reversing means by which to spread the holy name of Krishna. He understands his only business is spreading the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Such a person is to be recognized as an Uttama Adhikari, and his association should be immediately accepted according to the 6 processes.
Six processes?
I haven't expanded.
Huh?
I haven't expanded on the 6 processes.
You going to explain it?
No, I haven't expanded on
Okay.
the next.
Is it 6 processes of surrender to the Lord?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, 66th verse. Sarvadharman Parityaja Mamekam Saranam Vrajat. So in the purport, the 6 steps of surrender are explained. Accept everything favorable for devotional service, reject everything unfavorable, consider Krishna your only protector, consider Krishna as your maintainer, and then accept everything that happens as the mercy of the Lord, and always remain humble and meek in the execution of devotional service. Those are the 6 steps of Saranagati, surrender to the Lord. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Maharaj. The next topic, Sripada touches on Bhagavata Dharma, which is spiritual life. So, Risadeva was Maharaj Bharata's father. Bharatvarsha is derived from the name Maharaj Bharata. The principles or the institutions followed by the inhabitants of Bharatvarsha is called Varnashram Dharma, the real occupation to realize God. Varnashram Dharma means to follow the four principles of Varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra, and four principles of ashramas, Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa. Bhagavad Dharma, spiritual life, can be understood by understanding one's own identification, which is not a body composition of bones, flesh, urines, and stool. Our real identity is a spiritual soul, which is covered with inferior material energy. We act on bodily concept and try to claim jurisdiction, but in spiritual concept of life, everything belongs to God as an expansion of energy of God. Krishna says, Bhumari apo nalo vyahu kaham mano buddhir evacha. Since Krishna is the supplier of the material energy, actually nothing belongs to us. Srila Prabhupada gives an example. If a carpenter makes a good furniture and the material is supplied by someone else and the carpenter is paid wages, the furniture does not belong to the carpenter. Similarly, whatever we use is made from earthly material which is provided by the God.
It's very interesting that Karl Marx said the opposite. He said, actually, it's the person that made the object that's the owner, not the person that supplied the ingredients. So you can see how communism is, everything is upside down in communism. Go ahead.
So just follow up on this. Our normal condition is to give service to Lord, and when we forget God, we have no value, like detached body part.
Like the finger, it's cut off from the body.
Like the finger is cut from the body, yeah. The other topic Srila Prabhupada touches in this lecture is don't waste your life in sense gratification. And a couple of points supporting that is this human life should not be spoiled engaging in uselessly very hard labor for satisfaction of senses without any discrimination of food and sex, etc. In the verse Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5, Rishadeva is advising his son, my dear sons, don't live like hogs, strolling whole day and night and eating stool and without any sex discrimination. You go on satisfying your senses. This is not good, that you are wasting your time simply by sense gratification and you do not know that you have got a next life. Now in the age of Kali, the hog civilization is spread very widely. We have become sufficiently mad after sense gratification. We are engaged in Vikrama, all the forbidden activities like illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication and gambling. Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse in this context near 5.5.4, where a person considers sense gratification the aim of life. He certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activities. Srila Prabhupada points another madness of not taking suffering as sufferings. Krishna says, Janma Mrityu Jararvadi Dukha Dosharam, Bhagavad Gita 13.9.
Janma Mrityu Jaravyadi Dukha Dosana Darsana.
We are a spiritual soul living entrapped within this material body. As long as we act irresponsibly, we will get another material body. And there's a quote from Bhagavad Gita 3.13, talks about passing soul from one body to another. We will get a type of body according to our karma. And Srila Prabhupada said, according to your karma, you will get a type of body. That's a natural law. We'll get another body, but a particular body is not guaranteed. There are 8.4 million forms of body. We have to go through many births to get a human form that should not be wasted like hogs and dogs simply in for sense gratification. Therefore, Lord Rishabhadeva told his son, one should engage in penance and austerities to attain the divine position of devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified, and one attains this position. He attains eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever.
Done? Yeah. Very good. So write down the following, everybody. These are questions to ask to yourself and especially to ask your child. Number one, do you believe that you existed before birth in this body? Point one. Do you believe that you existed before birth in this body? Number two, do you believe that you will continue to exist after the body dies? Do you believe that there is the law of karma? Okay, what's the law of karma? That is, according to your activities and your desires, you will receive another body based on the consciousness you have developed in this body. And it's determined by the activities you have performed and the desires you have that are unfulfilled at the moment of death. Do you believe that there are laws of nature established by Krishna? Then you quote Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, 27th verse, Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasa hankarai hankarai kartaham iti manyate. Basically, that says that everyone is being controlled by the laws of nature, and therefore they're going to be forced to be born, to get old, to get sick, and die. And there's no way to escape that. Okay. Next question. Do you believe that there are three universal modes of nature that control the activities of all living entities? Those are sattva, rajas, and tamas, or goodness, passion, and ignorance. Okay, now your homework for next week is to complete the questions that you should ask yourself and your child. There are more. There are a lot more, actually. So you try and figure them out. I just gave you a list of some, but there are others equally important. So now you'll be able to know if you actually believe the fundamental principles of Krishna consciousness. And now you can also test your child, what they have learned so far in the demon schools, how much they have learned in Krishna consciousness and how much they have learned in the demon schools. You'll be able to judge. You'll probably be very surprised how little they know about Krishna consciousness and how much they are under the influence of the demons. But you never know. So, all right, so you have your homework for next week. So, probably you did homework.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
It's a very bad thing to always come late to the class. Not coming at all is worse. Coming late is also a very bad habit. It's not a good habit to have. There's some people come late all the time. Just like there was one man who was not attentive. So, that he was a pious man, but he had this problem of not being attentive. So, he was able to be elevated right up to the doors of Vaikuntha. But every time he had to wait for the doors to open, when the doors opened, he was either thinking of something else or doing something else. So the doors would open and close, and he would miss it. So it's because he couldn't focus on the purpose of going back to Godhead. So therefore he never made it to Vaikuntha. He made it right up to the door of Vaikuntha because of his inattention and always being late and not focusing his mind. Although he came right up to the doors of Vaikuntha, he never entered. So being late all the time is a very bad habit. Not coming is even worse. So, go ahead.
So the homework was to read Prabhupada's lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.1 and create a summary of outline along with references to the verses and examples that Srila Prabhupada gives. So the verse is 5.5.1 Shri Rishabhavacha Nayam Deho Deha Bhajam Nirlauke Kashtan Kaman Arhate Vidbhujam Ye Tapo Divyam Putraka Yena Sattvam Sudhyed Yasmad Brahma Saukyam Tvanantam.
So let me ask you a question. What does this verse say? What is it all about?
So this is where Rishabhadev is advising his children that the purpose of the body is not for sense gratification, but for God realization. That's the essence of.
So do you think this is relative to your life?
Yes, Maharaj.
As a parent, do you think you should do the same thing that Rishabhadev did?
Yes.
Have you done it? That's a question you have to ask yourself. Have you actually done this? You probably see that the answer is, well, I did a little bit. But the answer is basically no. So that's why we're going over this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the different, as we go through the lecture, there are different aspects that Prabhupada connects. So the first he starts with why is Srimad Bhagavatam the greatest literature? So in the material world, there are many types of trees, fruits and flowers, where you can get one type of fruit or flower from a particular type of tree. But in the spiritual world, there is the desire tree, that where you can get whatever you want. That's the Kalpataru, and Srimad Bhagavatam is considered. The Vedas are the tree of the knowledge, and the ripened fruit is Srimad Bhagavatam. So the essence of all the scriptures is Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, Srila Vyasadeva has compiled Srimad Bhagavatam as the last contribution after writing 18 Puranas, 108 Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, and Mahabharata. So this is because in spite of compiling so much literature, he was still disappointed until his spiritual master Narada Muni has advised him to describe the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the ripened fruit of the entire Vedic knowledge, that is Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah, the fault of Vyasadeva up until that point was he spent so much time talking about Varnashram Dharma that it took away the focus on Krishna. And therefore, Vyasadeva felt dissatisfied. He had an idea why he was dissatisfied, but he wanted to hear it from his guru, Narada Muni. And Narada Muni explained, you haven't really clearly explained about Krishna. You gave some information about Krishna, but it's sort of overwhelmed by all the other information you gave about Varnashram Dharma and things like that. So now, rewrite things that completely focused on Krishna rather than any other subject. So that's what Srimad Bhagavatam is. It's completely focused on Krishna. Go ahead.
So yeah, the next continuation, Srila Prabhupada also explains why Bhagavatam is called as Bhagavatam. So every shloka of Srimad Bhagavatam is full of spiritual information. If we take advantage of this great Vedic literature, then we become fully aware of Bhagavan and the devotees of Bhagavan. So therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam is nothing but it's Amala Purana. It's the pure form of spiritual relationship between the devotees and the Lord. So there are two kinds of Bhagavatam. One is Grantha Bhagavatam and the other is Person Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam has to be studied from the very beginning, and we have to take the lessons from a live Bhagavata. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advises that if we want to understand Bhagavatam in the pure essence, then we must approach a person whose life itself is Bhagavatam. So Bhagavata Paragya, Bhagavata Sthane. So that is, if we listen Srimad Bhagavatam from the Person Bhagavatam, then it is very easy to understand the spiritual knowledge given in Srimad Bhagavatam. Then Srila Prabhupada explains why India was called Bharatavarsha. Bharatavarsha was derived from the name Maharaj Bharat. Rishabhadev was the father of Maharaj Bharat, under whose name this land was called Bharatavarsha. And in fact, he also, in one of the question and answers towards the end, he explains that there are three kinds of Bharatas: the Shakuntala's son Bharata, Lord Rama's brother Bharata, and then obviously Rishabhadev's son Bharata. But according to Shastra, Bharatavarsha was actually because of this King Maharaj Bharata, who's the son of Rishabhadeva. Then next, Srila Prabhupada gives the context of how this verse was spoken by Rishabhadev, and himself is an incarnation of Krishna. So the instruction that Rishabhadev is giving is non-different from the instruction from Lord Krishna himself. And he explains the purpose of the Varnashrama Dharma, and then why, just like Rishabhadev, every person in Vedic literature, Vedic culture, there is a compulsory retirement, and that's tied with the Varnashrama Dharma, that is the essence of Vedic civilization. And then Srila Prabhupada goes to explain what is Vedic civilization. The whole Vedic civilization means to realize God. Vishnu Aradhyate. We are part and parcel of Vishnu, or the Supreme Lord.
So what would be the best book to read that explains who God is?
Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam.
Right.
Yes.
Well, can you learn about who God is by reading a science book in elementary school or middle school or college?
No.
No, you won't learn anything. Can you learn it by reading novels like, or books like Dog Man, or How to Change Your Sexuality in 2 days, or Critical Race Theory? No, no information at all. Those are all the books that your kids are reading. They're what you call recommended books to read. Just like Elon Musk, he recommends you must read 9 books that I have read to really be like me, a big fool. So his 9 books that you must read books, right? Did he mention Bhagavatam? No. Did he mention Bhagavad Gita? No. So you see, people are being misled big time. Now the question is, are we misleading our kids? That's the question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the Vedic civilization, the purpose of the Vedic civilization is to understand that we're all covered with the material dress. He uses the verses 15:7 and 14:4. Mamai Vamsho Jeva Bhuta Jeva Loka Sanatana. Jeva Bhuta, these living entities, not only human beings but every living entity. Sarva Yonishu Kaunteya, that is 14:4. So in every form of life, the living entities are covered with the material dress. So the Bhagavata Dharma, or the spiritual life, can be understood when one has understood this identification that he is not the body. So then Prabhupada
That's
continues.
another question. Do you believe you are your body? You can write that one down.
We all act that we are the body.
Huh?
We all act that we are the body.
Well, it's a question to ask.
Yeah.
Does your child believe that you are this body? Go ahead.
So here Prabhupada explains the bodily conception of life. So the bodily conception of life is the disease of the material world. It's in fact the animal life. We are thinking always in terms of this body. I am this body, I'm Indian, I'm American, Englishman. In so many ways we are designated. So as long as we think in these terms of knowledge that I'm this body, then we are in the bodily conception of life. Yasyatma buddhi kunape tridhaduke. This is a bag of 3 elements. The body is a bag of 3 elements, kapha, pitta and vayu. Or in English he refers to flesh, bone and mucus. So what you will find when we dissect the body, nothing but flesh, body and urine, stool and so many things. These are all material things. So if we think that I'm this body, a composition of all these elements, is that, so Prabhupada questions, like, is that really good intelligence? And obviously, no. So when he compares such people who relate to themselves with the bodies are no better than cows and asses. So once he goes through the next, like, what is the first step in self-realization? That is that, to come to the realization that we're not this combination of blood, bone, flesh, but aham brahmasmi, that is, I'm the spirit soul. So that is the real realization. And then Prabhupada connects.
That's the beginning of spiritual realization.
Beginning of the spiritual. And then Prabhupada connects various verses systematically to establish, first of all, that we are covered with the material dimension, which again Krishna declares in 7.4 in Bhagavad Gita, that these material elements, bhumi, rapo, analo, vayu, kham, mano, buddhi, so these are the 8 separated energies of the Supreme Lord. So clearly the material dimension is also coming from the Supreme Lord. Then in the 7.5, Lord establishes
what is that last statement you made? Clearly the material conception is also coming from the
material dimension.
Dimension. Okay, yes. What does that mean?
As well as the Prakriti is all nothing but an energy of the Lord.
So what's the conclusion because of that?
So that means the material body, if it is it's also spiritual, but if it is used in the service, again later Prabhupada connects that if we use it in the service of the Lord, then everything is spiritualized. But until that point, we are seeing, as long as the material dimension is used for our sense gratification, then we are removed. It's like, and then he compares like a finger that is
Well,
cut.
if the body is made of elements that belong to Krishna,
Yes,
that means you should only use the body for Krishna's
Krishna's
service.
service.
Then the question is, are you using your body only in the service of Krishna?
That's a question.
Most people will say no. You see how these questions are very important. Then you'll be able to judge whether you are actually Krishna conscious or not, and you'll be able to judge whether your kids are actually Krishna conscious or not. That's your homework for next week. Go ahead.
So in the second verse, 7.5, Lord Krishna says that aparayam itastvanyam
Pariyamitas, yeah.
itastvanyam prakritim vidyame param. So there, essentially the Lord says that there is another nature, superior nature, that is the living entity, that in fact controls this body, or dharite jagat. So that is the Jiva Bhuta. And he also establishes that in the next, he connects both the material and the spiritual, and Lord establishes that everything is part and parcel of him. So Mamaya Vamsho Jiva Bhuta Jiva Loka. So the living entities, Krishna says, are my part and parcel. So we are covered with the material energy, although we are spiritual energy. That is our true position. So then Srila Prabhupada goes to establish that once we understand that we are part and parcel of the Lord, what is our real duty? So if we...
That's another question. What does it mean to be part and parcel of Krishna?
Yes. So if we... So that's where Prabhupada says that if we alternatively, instead of the spiritual realization, if we stay in the bodily conception, then we're always thinking about comfort of this body, or the extended body, like wife, children, family, community, society. So these are all part of the bodily conception of life.
So that means that we're not thinking at all about the soul.
Correct.
We're only thinking about the body.
On the other hand, if we arrive at the spiritual conception of life, then we come to the realization that everything belongs to the Lord. Isavashyam idam sarvam, that is the Ishopanishad mantra 1. So Krishna already declares in 7.4 that the material dimension comes from him. In 7.5, the living entities come from him. And then in 10.8, he establishes that aham sarvasya prabhavo. So essentially the Lord is the controller and the proprietor of everything. And then Prabhupada gives some examples like microphone. It is made of some earthly metal, but this material belongs to God. I may have taken advantage of this material and manufactured something, but this does not mean it is mine. Similarly, if a carpenter makes good furniture, but the wood is supplied by someone else, the carpenter is paid for the his wages, then whatever maybe the nice furniture made, it will belong to the owner, so not to the carpenter. So that's the example Prabhupada establishes to articulate that everything, even though we are using all the material elements, we should be cognizant that everything belongs to the Supreme Lord.
Well, if everything belongs to the Supreme Lord, then we should use everything in the service of the Lord.
Yes.
It's not like one for Krishna, two for me. 2 for Krishna, 4 for me. 4 for Krishna, 8 for me. No, it's not that way. That's not the right calculation. Everything should be for Krishna.
Yes.
If we want to go back to Godhead. If you want to stay in the material world, that's another question.
Yeah, and Prabhupada continues to reinforce that we are always not independent, and in fact we have no value without relationship or service
That's
to
another
Krishna.
question. Do you believe you are independent? Go ahead.
So Krishna says in the 15th chapter, 7th verse, Jeva Bhota, Mamai Vamsho Jeva Bhota Jeva Loka. So we are part and parcel of Krishna. And Prabhupada again gives two examples, both related with finger. One is, finger is part and parcel of the body, but it has no separate existence. For example, if the finger is cut off and it is on the street, it has no value. People are trampling and nobody cares for it. On the other hand, if the finger is attached to the body, even if there is some disease or something, we feel the pain and we can spend thousands of dollars to take care of it. Similarly, he uses the other dimension of finger, which is if the finger is, when I ask the finger to come and give me an itching sensation, and then the finger is in normal condition, that means it's serving the body. But if the finger cannot give the service, then it is useless.
So in other words, if a person wastes their life only taking care of the body and don't do anything for Krishna, then they've wasted their life. They don't deserve to have a human body in the next life. So those are decisions that we have to make. Go ahead.
Yep.
Okay.
So then Prabhupada then summarizes the essence of this particular verse 5.5.1 and says that essentially the modern civilization is like hogs. So Rishabhadev is advising his sons, my dear sons, this body, especially in the human society, it is not to be spoiled. It is not to be spoiled engaging it uselessly. Very hard labor for the satisfaction of the senses. So there are two primary activities that whole civilization is focused on for sense gratification. Where to find the source of the income and how to eat anything and everything without any discrimination. So he then compares the civilization to the hog civilization. Just like hogs have no discrimination, it is prepared to eat even stool. So this kind of life, to work very hard and get food stuff without any discrimination and then satisfy senses without any discrimination of sex. A hog, you will find they have no discrimination of sex, of any relationships. So my dear sons, don't live like hogs, toiling whole day and night and eating stool and without any discrimination going on satisfying your senses. So that's the meaning of that verse. Then Prabhupada establishes a very powerful statement saying that human life means a peaceful life without any trouble. In fact, that is the purpose of the Vedic civilization. The Lord designed the system to be very peaceful with the ultimate goal of God realization.
That's another question. Do you believe that your life is very peaceful?
So the Varnashrama system was meant to teach the civilization how to be happy and peaceful. Lord establishes in Bhagavad Gita 4:13, Chaturvarnam Maya.
Your life is happy and peaceful, or do you believe that your life is stressful and miserable? Obviously, the kids that get a gun and go to school and shoot other kids, they're stressed. They're in distress. They're not peaceful. Go ahead.
So Chaturvarnam Maya Srishtam Gunakarma Vivagashah. So Chaturvarnam Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. Prabhupada shares how the Vedic civilization was always established with Brahmanas used to cultivate the knowledge and they used to advise Kshatriyas. And the Kshatriyas, the rulers, then take that knowledge and they distribute to the general mass of people for the elevation to the spiritual platform. So then Srila Prabhupada says that since we do not have that Vedic civilization, in fact we must perform tapasya to elevate ourselves. Tapasya means austerity, penance is voluntary acceptance of something, some means of activity which may or may not be palatable. And gives the example again of a patient who has typhoid, and a physician may forbid him to take certain type of food, such as particularly solid stuff. But if the patient is accustomed to take solid food like parathas, in such a situation, taking parathas in fact could mean death. So
Could what?
Could cause death. So the realization to arrive at is that the material bondage actually is caused by this body. Our real problem is this body, and that we do not accept or we do not know, but that is the truth. So we have become sufficiently mad in this material world because we are engaged always in the activities which are forbidden. For example, we are drinking, that is forbidden. We are eating meat, that is forbidden. We are having illicit sex, that is forbidden. And we are gambling, that is forbidden. Then Prabhupada goes on to explain how this madness in the material world is amplified. So we're all suffering due to the madness, but actually the suffering is caused by the threefold miseries, and no one can easily realize that.
By what?
So the suffering is caused by the threefold miseries, but because we're in the madness of the bodily conception,
Which are? What are the three?
Adhyatmika, Adidayika, Adibhautika,
Yes.
but we do not see them happening to us. We cannot see the relationship between how these three forces are operating on us. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 13.9,
What, like when it's really cold and you feel cold all the time, you can't?
no, in the sense we do not see that the three forces are operating under the direction of the Supreme Lord.
Okay.
So we obviously we feel the pain, but we cannot see that there is an orchestration of these forces according to our karma and the fact that we are away from, in serving the Lord. So that's what Prabhupada is saying, that we do not see it because we're only thinking that we are in control.
All right. Go ahead.
See, for example, here Prabhupada gives the examples. We may be perfect in arranging the material civilization to enjoy life, but we will not be allowed to live forever. So that again we do not see. And then he gives the example, another example, that I may be making a nice arrangement for my future enjoyment, like good bank balance, nice skyscrapers and so on, but there is no guarantee that I will live to enjoy all of that. And so then Krishna is essentially saying, you are scientifically advanced, there is no doubt about it, but what about your death? Why you should accept death if you are eternal? So, and then basically, Nitya Shasvatoyam na hanyate hanyamane sharire. So, Prabhupada is essentially saying that we are acting sinfully and committing many sinful activities, and then we are becoming entangled with one body, which causes another body at the end of this life. And it's a cycle of actions that will end up in sinful tendencies. So then Prabhupada continues to explain how the body is continuing to go through 8.4 million species. And Bhagavad Gita 2.13, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yamanam jara tada dehantara praptir dhirastatra namuhyati. We are now entrapped in this material body, and so long as we act irresponsibly, we will continue to get another material body. There are 8.4 million species. So,
That's another question. Do you believe that you have gone through 8 million species before you have come to the human form of life? You're going to get a lot of no's. Guaranteed. Go ahead.
And Prabhupada gives the example that Padma Purana, Jalajana Lakshani Stavara Lakshamimshati. So there are 900,000 forms of the body within the water itself. Stavara Lakshamimshati, so the trees, plants and so on. So and we have gone through this body, and eventually we have come to this human body after many millions of years of this evolutionary consciousness, evolutionary process. So one must soberly use Srimad Bhagavatam's instruction. Soberly. In the human society.
Soberly is another word.
Soberly. In the human society, we should not waste our life like hogs and dogs simply for sense gratification. That is the essence of this verse. If we can utilize the body properly for a higher standard of life, then in fact we can also go to the higher planetary system. So then how do we accept the real truth? Srila Prabhupada says that the right way to accept the truth is through the Shastra. Our knowledge should be through Shastra. That is practical. We use the process of deductive knowledge. We get the knowledge from Shastra, like Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam.
Deductive knowledge.
Deductive.
Yeah, you said deductible. Anyway, go ahead.
We do not claim to be big scientists. We just accept the a priori truths and lead our life. So our process is
Accept what kind of proofs? What did you say?
we accept the a priori truths.
A priori.
A priori.
You slurred the word.
A priori.
A priori. You know, you slurred the word. It's a priori.
A priori truths.
Yeah.
Revealed by the Shastra. And
see, when you speak French, in French, you always emphasize the second syllable. But when you speak English, you always emphasize the first syllable. So it would be a priori.
A priori.
Not a priori. No, it's a priori.
The stress is on the first syllable.
Yeah.
So our process of knowledge is not any speculation. There is no maybe, perhaps. We accept this. We don't accept the knowledge that it may be, perhaps. These are all foolish.
These are all speculation.
Speculation. Our source of knowledge is Krishna or Krishna's disciple. In fact, Krishna says that evam parampara praptam yamam rajashya vihu in 4.2. So we must accept in the parampara. And then
is the disciplic succession coming originally from Krishna.
And then Prabhupada establishes how we get our next body.
Did you write all this down, or are you just going over it?
I took pretty much Prabhupada's this one and then...
No, but did you write it down?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I sent it in the email.
Okay.
Yeah. So how do we get our next body? We get our next body according to our karma in this lifetime. Karmana daivanetrena jantru deho upapadyate. That is Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31:1. So according to your karma, you will get a type of body. That is the nature's law. And then Prabhupada says that just because if I'm a rich man, great minister, politician, and I want the next lifetime to be something we cannot control. The nature's law will determine whether you will be a hog or a human.
Another question. Do you believe that there are laws established by civilized society? And do you believe there's another set of laws established by God, and that we have to follow both sets of laws? Go ahead.
And then the next Prabhupada says, now that we understand that we are not in control, that it's the laws of nature that determine, then how to achieve eternal life?
Determine. No. The laws of nature determine. Not determine.
Determine. Laws of nature determine the next body. So then how do we actually achieve the eternal life?
Determine. You're emphasizing second
syllable.
Yeah.
Determine.
You're speaking French, not English.
I should move there. So how to achieve eternal life? Prakrite kriyamanani gune karmani sharvasaha. So we are completely under the grip of the nature's law. If we want to stop the death,
completely under what?
We are always under the grip of the nature's law. if we want to stop death,
So you see, there's two sets of laws. There's the laws of society and the laws of God. We have to follow both sets. Most people don't even believe that there's laws established by God. That's why they get into trouble. Go ahead.
so if we want to stop death, then we must follow tapasya. We must accept the process of austerity, which will purify our
Okay,
existence.
the ultimate question to ask your kid: are you willing to accept voluntary, uncomfortable things to make spiritual advancement?
Progress.
Like uncomfortable. Are you willing to accept to stop staying on the internet all day long? Or talking on your cell phone all day long? Or talking nonsense all day long? Or no internet for a day, yeah.
So then Prabhupada says only through the purification process and by following the Bhagavata literature, we can follow the and revive our original eternal life. And then he also next continues to establish why is it necessary to purify?
What?
Why is it necessary to purify our existence? And then he establishes that
Well,
in the
that's a question, see? That's another question right there. Go ahead.
and then he establishes again that we will never be able to live happily if we do not purify our life and realize our spiritual identity. So that's why it's a mandatory thing for one to realize the purpose of tapa in order to realize their eternal identity.
Learn the value of performing tapasya.
Tapasya, yes. And
Voluntary,
that yes.
discomfort to make spiritual advancement.
And that's where he
But
says
see that Lord, like, as we've explained, Lord Chaitanya made the so-called austerity actually enjoyable and fun, as opposed to what the austerity was to be performed in previous ages, which was difficult. Today, our austerity is chanting, dancing, feasting, hearing uplifting philosophy of the Vedas, going on Sankirtan and spreading the word of Krishna consciousness and giving out holy food and getting people to dance and sing and organizing festivals where there's a lot of dancing and singing and feasting. So are all those things like tapasya, where you're voluntarily accepting, let's say, pain to make spiritual advancement? No, they're all enjoyable. So because this age is so difficult to make spiritual advancement, therefore Krishna has made it easier by these enjoyable transcendental activities that you would not really consider to be voluntarily accepting pain to make spiritual advancement. You would say, wait a minute, these things are not painful, they're actually fun. So that is a special, let's say, dispensation in the age of quarrel and lying and quarreling,
hypocrisy.
or Kali Yuga, the age of people are lying and they're arguing that they're not lying. So we see that all the time in the politicians and the all kinds of people. They get caught lying after insisting that they were not lying, right? It's just like someone has murdered someone, so the lawyer says, well, when a judge asks you what you plead, tell him you're not guilty. What? There's so much evidence that person murdered someone, and he's telling the judge, "Well, I'm not guilty." See, so this is a perfect symptom of Kali Yuga, or this age of hypocrisy and quarrel. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then finally, Srila Prabhupada ends with saying, only devotees can actually change their fate. Krishna says, Aham
Change
Tvam,
their what?
their fate.
What?
Fate.
Fate.
Fate. And because Krishna says, Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Moksha Isyami Masucha. So, Krishna is guaranteeing the protection from all the resultant action of
The reason
sin.
I asked you why I said what, you said faith.
Fate.
It's fate.
Fate.
If you again, you're
Faith
extending the
is
second
fate.
syllable. You're speaking French. You're not speaking English.
I never knew.
Faith. Faith. It's faith.
Fate. So the fate is changed. If you do not surrender to Krishna, then you have to suffer or enjoy the actions of your fruitive activities. But when you surrender to Krishna, He takes charge of squaring up all your sinful activities and their reactions. So if you surrender to Krishna, your fate is changed. Otherwise, it is not possible.
Fate, not faith. There's a
Fate.
difference between faith and fate.
Fate.
Yeah. What?
Fate.
F-A-I.
No.
Yeah,
Faith
F-A-T-
and-
F-A-T-E. Fate. This is very succinct. Fate.
Huh?
If you said faith,
Faith. Fate.
Okay.
So that's it, Maharaj. So, thank you.
okay. So now you have your homework for next week. So does anybody else do the homework that's here? No. Okay. So we're going to go over this again tomorrow because there are people here. Let's see. Dhananjaya did his homework also, right, Dhananjaya? So you can present it tomorrow. And there's some other people that did homework too. Okay, any questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Over
So,
the
so you can start doing your homework for next week. All right, go ahead.
So, as Prabhupada keeps mentioning, and you have repeated many times, that are you doing your
Duty as
duty as a parent,
Yeah.
right? The questions definitely answer, like helps us to ask, but as a parent with all good intention, I feel I am trying my best to bring what I missed in my childhood. But how do I know, is that enough? Or
Well, that's why you have homework for next week. These are all the questions you should ask first yourself, and then you ask your child.
true,
Then you'll find out how many yeses and nos you get.
true Maharaj, but as you see, and as we already spoke in the lecture, not just multiple classes, the younger they are, the acceptance is very easy. It's not about, there's no question.
What? The acceptance if you teach them.
Right, yeah, definitely.
I mean, nowadays they don't even teach the younger kids. Go ahead. The parents don't even teach the younger kids.
Yeah, and it is forbidden in the school.
Instead of going to Vrindavan, they go to Disneyland.
True.
Right. Instead of seeing Krishna, they see Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. See? So, is that the right thing for the parent to do?
No, Maharaj. I mean, that's what the consciousness is slowly developing. But once they, as we hear that 13 years is where the karma starts for the kid. So how do we make sure, or how do I make sure?
No, when the karma starts, you mean
the
when they reach puberty,
puberty, yeah,
at 12 years old or 13 years
13,
old.
depending on each kid.
Yeah, then they become overwhelmed by the desires they had at the moment of death,
Hmm.
but were sort of suppressed in their younger age. But as soon as they come to puberty, all those desires all of a sudden appear in their mind, and it's bewildering to them.
So the question is like, what more, or uh, what are what is that I'm not doing enough?
Well, that's what you're going to find
The
out
whole-
now by doing your homework for next week.
Okay. Okay. But one more question on the material education.
Yes.
Prabhupada also encourages to study, get the PhD, and prove it. Uh, uh, the Swarup Damodar, if I'm not sure if I'm saying the name right, the scientist who did his PhD and proved that mathematically. Uh,
Okay, there were several scientists. It was Swarup Damodar who got his PhD in chemical science, and he used it not to do any research, but to be able to talk on the same level as other PhD scientists and introduce them to Krishna consciousness. Then there was another PhD scientist, but he was a mathematician, and he was actually you can see a lot of his work on the internet today, and he wrote a lot and he published a lot and explaining Vedic science. So his name was I'm forgetting it right now. Anyway, I'll tell you what his name is later on.
so will
You can look up all his work. It's all on the internet. He made many videos explaining the cosmology of the material universe based on the Vedic knowledge, as opposed to cosmology that's being taught in schools. Go ahead.
So will the right approach be to still study and show the examples of whom we already have the
Well,
disciples, or
like I said, there's two sets of laws we have to follow, right? The laws of the state and the laws that God gives us. So there's two types of knowledge. It's the mundane knowledge that we're learning in schools, and there's the transcendental knowledge that we're learning in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So unless the children learn the transcendental knowledge, Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, they'll be overwhelmed with all the misconceptions in the mundane knowledge. So they won't be able to balance things off. So that's what's happening. The parents push their kids overwhelmingly to attain the mundane knowledge, and they don't really emphasize the spiritual knowledge. So then it's just one-sided. And the kids later on, they don't believe in God anymore. They don't even want to come to the temple. So both things are necessary to know. Just like it's necessary, absolutely necessary, to know the laws of God as well as the laws of the state. Otherwise, you'll make many mistakes in life. Okay? So if you don't want your children to be misled by the material knowledge, you have to teach them the spiritual knowledge. In the same time as they're learning the material knowledge. So there's a verse like that. Vidyam, it's the 13th mantra of the Ishopanishad. Vadanti tattvavitas tattvam yajganamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. You have to learn what's called sat and asat simultaneously. What is absolutely true and what is materially, let's say, what is not eternal and what is eternal. So sat means eternal truth, and asat means what is not eternal truth. You have to learn them both at the same time so that you don't get misled by what is not true. If you only learn what the truth is, you could easily be misled by the non-truth because you haven't been trained to understand what is true and what is not true. What is not true are things that are temporary. What is true is things that are eternal. So if we only concern ourselves with things that are not eternal, we will be misled throughout our whole life. If we concern ourselves with only things that are true, we won't be misled, but we could be fooled by things that are not true because we were not trained in it.
Right.
So you have to learn them both simultaneously.
So the point is how to learn, like the material schools are teaching the non-truth, which we all know. So balancing is,
well, that's your duty as a parent. You have to teach your kid what is true. Right? So they'll come home and they say, "Mom, we went to the moon." And then you say, "No, they didn't really go to the moon, but you're going to have the proof." That's why we had the proof the other day.
right.
You see. So that's why you have to come to class to learn how to debunk the non-truth of material education with the truth. Otherwise, you have nothing to say. So for 3 generations in India now, there has not been passation of spiritual knowledge from the grandmother and grandfather or the parents to their kids. That's why there's so much atheism now in India. That passation has not taken place. It broke down. Although the parents or the grandparents had the knowledge, they were not able to articulate that to their kids anymore. And they pushed their kids just to learn material knowledge, not to learn spiritual knowledge. Okay, we'll stop right there.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So every time your kid comes home from school, you say, "Okay, what nonsense did you learn today?" And they'll say, "Well, we learned that there's gender neutrality." You say, "Okay, now you're going to have to explain how that's a problem." So who's going to sing? Oh, probably you did your homework too, right? Yeah, tomorrow you can read it. Huh? Are you going to start or are you going to wait? No, you don't have to wait. You have to start. You already waited. You going to sing? Who's going to sing? Yeah, go ahead.
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri
Shri Guru
Guru
Charana Padma Kevala
Mate
Manamui Sabadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bai Ye Baba Toriya Jai Ye Baba Toriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya
Don't leave the
Chitate
incense
Koriya
burning
Aikya Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitate Koriya Aikya Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati Shri Guru Charane Rati Se Uttama Gati Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
Prasade Buddhe Sarva Asa
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
Ye Prasade Buddhe Sarva Asa
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु शे चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु शे दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
Gani Prakashito
प्रेम भक्ति जाय होते अविद्या विनाश जाते प्रेम भक्ति जाय होते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेदे गाय जहर चरितो ओ वेदे गाय जहर चरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनार बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनार बंधु लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवाना आह प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पादचया आह प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पादचया आहा प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पादचया देहो मोरे पादचया एबे जाश गुशुक त्रिभुवानाय Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sanyavadi Paschata Desatarine
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrindam
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Hare
Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Pararajagachasta Tarasatarashi Shimada's Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavindi ki jai Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur ki jai Prem Shri Kahoshi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giridhan Govardhan ki jai Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai Mayapura Dham ki jai Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai Tulasi Devi ki jai Bhakti Devi ki jai Ganga Maya ki jai Jamuna Maya ki jai Samaveta Bhaktivinda ki jai Nitai Gaura Premananda. All glories to some of the Buddha. All glories to some of the Buddha. All glories to some of the Buddha. All glories to Shiguru and Shiguranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavan ki jai Namah Om Vishnu Krishna The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. Bow down to his lotus feet.